Next case, V-42-10, Lamar Advertising Company for 1800 North Kinzer Pike. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Miley. Again, this is V42-10, Lamar Advertising Company. The site location is 1800 North Kinzer. It's actually very close to the last petition that we had. This is the quarry site at the northeast corner of the bypass in Kinzer. You can see in yellow on the right side. There's a little bit of history to go over as well. You can see again the active quarry and its relationship to both Kinzer and the bypass, as well as North Walnut Street. And what they're asking for tonight is a sign variance to allow a new off-premise sign to be constructed, a billboard. As you're well aware, this is not a variance that we see very often. We feel this is a very unique situation that we've come to. We think a very good resolution, but does have to come before the board. And the history here is when the B-line construction was anticipated and ready to take place in 2008, there was a large existing billboard that Hoosier Outdoor Advertising at the time, now Lamar, had in place at 216 South College. And this is the B-line is constructed now, and 3rd Street. This is the bridge that's going over 3rd Street. And this is the approximate location of where that billboard was. It was a very visible billboard. This is the backside facing east. It was a large 4-panel billboard structure. This is facing west. You can see what became, from this picture, what became the B-line crossing over 3rd Street. And you can see the billboard in question. So with that, the petitioner and the city went into negotiations and tried to work a compromise to include the removal of that billboard. We found it to be a very undesirable billboard location right along the B line. We felt that we were really trying to work with the petitioner to come up with really a mutually agreeable solution to include the removal of that billboard. With that, we entered into those negotiations to include a relocation, to try to find a separate location, a different location that worked for them and didn't have the same negative impacts, visual impacts to our downtown and the B-line trail that the existing billboard did. With that, they also agreed to move the billboard, but also to reduce it in panels from essentially a 4-panel billboard to a 2-panel billboard. The proposal that we have in front of us tonight would reduce that from what was in place at 576 square feet a side to a proposed 381 square feet a side. With that, they have actually already removed the billboard as part of that agreement in anticipation of the construction and that has been done now. And this, again, is the site with the billboard and the site now without it. And this was prior to the completion of the B-line, but you can see the difference of the removal of that billboard. So the mutually agreed location that the petitioners brought forward that the city is supportive of is along the bypass, again, very close to our last petition. It is on the quarry site, and it is essentially located along that. This is, again, on the bypass project. It would be right along an existing fence line at the south property line along the bypass. And the petitioners mocked up what that billboard would actually look in scale in representation form on the property. You can see the quarry site to the right side of the screen to the north and the bypass on the left side. You can see this essentially the 75 feet of separation from the center of the what would be the westbound lane of the bypass and the billboard. It has a one pole structure that extends out more toward the quarry site. This is looking the other direction. This is looking east, and you can see Kinzer right here, and again the bypass, the westbound lane. So the reasoning behind their choosing of this site again is obviously the visibility and the car counts on the bypass are desirable from them. From our standpoint with that agreement, we feel that this is a much less of an aesthetic issue than it is in the middle of the downtown along the B line. It has much of a less impact because it's a quarry site. It's already somewhat of a lower aesthetic. So really summarizing the criteria that we have for the variance, we don't find any injury with this petition. That we really feel that the negative impacts that would be associated with a normal billboard request are certainly balanced by the removal of the larger billboard along the B line and in the downtown. We do not find any adverse impacts. The aesthetics of the current quarry site will not be significantly changed or impacted with this that we might see on maybe a more developed site. We feel that this was a very creative, unique solution to the undesirable billboard downtown, and we feel that the site itself is a unique location. It was maybe a little more difficult to try to find a site that worked for the petitioner that also worked for the city. We feel that this has really kind of made that balance using that quarry site, and we feel that the high visibility that they're allowed and really the lower aesthetic impact from a city standpoint is a really good solution. So with that, we do feel that it meets the criteria of a variance, and we are recommending approval of this case V4210 with the two conditions outlined in your staff report.
Thank you, Patrick. The petitioner or petitioner's representative step forward. You'll have 20 minutes to make your case. Raise your right hand. Thanks. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, state your name, please.
My name is Chris Iverson. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of Lamar Advertising.
Okay.
Just a little bit more background with Patrick, to add to what Patrick gave you. The agreement that the city and Hoosier crafted out was one that basically came with the acquisition that Lamar, when Lamar purchased the Hoosier company in February of 2008. And we are now at a point where we've satisfied all the terms and the conditions of the agreement and have looked for a suitable location that is going to be more in a commercial industrial type area and away from the mixed use area which the structure on Third was. And so we believe that this is a good location that satisfies those requirements. In that packet that we gave you, along with the agreement, this wasn't part of the agreement, but just some additional information that would help you for a little bit of background. Not only the location that we took down, which was the 4-panel back-to-back structure. There's 4 faces. Since that agreement, we've also taken down an additional 12 faces in the city that would be arguably in a mixed-use environment, more residential in nature. One was on Rogers Street, and then one was on Walnut, and then the additional structures were all on Arlington Road. We took those structures down for various reasons. Some was safety, some was aesthetics, some was one location we lost our lease. But I just wanted to add that we had taken down an additional over 3,300 square feet of advertising on top of the agreement that that Hoosier had crafted with the city. We look forward to the support. And hopefully we can build the structure and honor the rest of the agreement that was crafted with the city.
Thank you. Questions or staff or petitioner? Barry?
There was a letter that came through to us that suggested that this area has a lot of traffic accidents in particular. Do you know anything about that? Is that indeed? I was just curious.
The bypass project, that any improvements to the intersection that could be made would be a part of that project as well, but I don't know of any additionally.
I don't know. It just was cited, and I was curious about that. So the agreement, I guess, is from 2007. Mm-hmm. So would then and the provision is that this would be in place for a minimum of 5 years. And that would be with the installation of the actual sign? Is that when that would run?
And Patty Mulvihill at Legal may have more of an answer. I do know that that essentially it was an agreement that the billboard would be taken down prior to the new one being put up or the Beeline completion of the Beeline Trail.
Okay.
I don't know if there was an additional agreement. Those are the dates that I'd remembered.
I was just curious since it's been already several years. That's all I had.
Pat?
I have a question, Patrick, in terms of where are these off-premises signs allowed? Where could you construct one without a variance?
You can't. You can't do a new one. We have an inventory of all of the existing off-premise billboard signs that we keep very clear track of each year, and we take picture inventories of them. The Unified Development Ordinance does not allow new off-premise signs to be constructed without a variance. The only really exception to those are you see at times nonprofits using the right-of-way with very small signage for limited times to advertise events, festivals, those kinds of things. Those and street signs, et cetera, are really the few exceptions that we have for anything like that.
So this truly is a one-off kind of situation?
Yep.
Any other questions?
I'm a little, I understand the city has an agreement here. What if it's not approved?
It's my understanding, and we may get more comments from Patty, but it's my understanding that the city can't approve a variance. The board has to approve a variance. We have agreed to support the variance. I think we would highly encourage, and we think it meets the criteria, but we would also highly encourage the board to. We think that there was a very good spirit of agreement with the petitioners. I am not a lawyer and would not venture into what any legal ramifications of denying it would be.
Speaking of the agreement with the petitioners, the agreement was with a local company, Hoosier Outdoor Advertising. And then that company was sold to Lamar, but the contract doesn't provide any assigning of it to Lamar, that agreement.
If I can add to that.
It's just a
I'm sorry.
question for staff first.
Sorry, I apologize.
So I understand the city's obligation to Hoosier. There is no clause in there that assigns that contract.
Sorry.
Patty Mulvihill with the city's legal department. I wasn't privy to the negotiations, but my understanding, and I believe what he was going to say, when the city was in the process of negotiating this with Hoosier, if memory serves, Lamar was very much already in the purchasing process or dealing with Hoosier. The city was aware that there was probably going to be a purchase. There isn't an assign clause in here, but the city's legal department was aware of the purchase and was fully with the intent that it would probably be dealing with this with Lamar instead of Hoosier when the billboards were actually removed and it became our turn to support our part of the agreement.
Okay.
So it's not in there, but that's not something the city was unaware of when it was actually negotiating the contract. We fully expected, my understanding is we fully expected to be dealing with Lamar once the billboards were removed and staff in Lamar had found a suitable location for the new billboards. I don't believe that was outside the realm of what the city knew it would be doing when this point actually came to pass.
It's just strange to have a contract like this and nothing.
I wasn't privy to it. I don't know who wrote it, but I would imagine that it was probably done and approved by Corporation Counsel Kevin Roebling and probably negotiated with Tricia Burns would have been my guess at the time.
Thank you. Patrick, that is an unbelievably valuable billboard. And we are doing a bypass improvement to a gateway into our community. I mean, we're doing an incredible bypass improvement. And we're going to slap a billboard right there for everyone that comes into our town to look at Smokin' Jack's Barbecue. So have we, you're like, could you please ask a question?
I'm
I would agree
anticipating
with
the
that.
question and
Have
can
we
answer, but-
consulted with anyone regarding the bypass improvement and what the city or the county, how they feel about a billboard going in that specific area. I get that there's a quarry there, but you can't see the quarry.
We have not consulted with anybody that I'm aware of. I think what the city as a policy was looking at is a direct relation to a new billboard, even at a location like this, versus what we felt as being a huge negative impact to one of the biggest economic generators that we have in the town of the Beeline Trail, and the value that we put on our downtown, and felt that that trade-off was well worth it in our opinion.
They're getting a much more valuable asset.
They may be, but I think what the city standpoint is, we feel that we were as well by removing it from the downtown.
Okay, but we haven't consulted with anyone regarding the bypass
To my
improvement.
knowledge, to my knowledge.
We don't know how that, I don't even know how that's going to look when the bypass improvement's done.
I have consulted the bypass plans to make sure that the proposed location was outside of any right-of-way issues or anything with the widening. We did take that into account and make sure there was no conflict with that.
What about the pedestrian path?
It's
it
outside of the
extend there?
scope, it's outside of the scope of the project. Just outside, but
Okay,
outside.
Thank you.
Don?
I may add an amendment that Sue is on the next negotiating team because I agree the metrics of square feet aren't very interesting, and Arlington Road was cut off. It doesn't go anywhere, so it's not surprising they don't need billboards. So congratulations to Lamar. You negotiated a very good deal. I would agree with Sue. This is, I'm not sure that anybody could see the one that was downtown a few more years on that one tree. But anyway, it is what it is, and I'm not thrilled with the position of being up here. We've got to either be the spoilers of a sign that's already down and 3 years of work, or we've got to approve it. So kind of wish they'd asked first and negotiated second, but I guess that's water under the bridge. So, but anyway, different metrics if you ever show us another one, please. And that's not to you, that's to, whoever's upstairs negotiating it, so.
Any other questions?
Oh, I do have a couple more. This is on city property, is that?
No, it is not. It's on private property of the
It's on the quarry property?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And then, well, I guess it'd be state property if it was on the road. The 5 years, was that 5 years to execute this agreement, or are you suggesting there's only a 5-year life on this billboard? Because I find that hard to believe. I just want to clarify that.
Patty Mulvihill again with the city's legal department. The term is actually, it's not specifically defined. I would read the agreement as a whole. We have 5 years to kind of complete our negotiations and make our determinations. It's not really how long the billboard's going to
That's
stay
right.
there.
So it's 5 years to get it
Yeah.
installed. It's going
Yeah.
to be there forever.
Yeah, it's going to be there forever. I mean, that was 5 years to work out the terms of the agreement, not the placement of the sign.
Okay. And the lighting, will that be subject to city ordinances, including the amount of candle power that is allowed to
Yeah,
bleed off?
And you see that on this billboard, you can see even that they're showing the downlit, that they're cut off there. So they will have to be, that's the condition of approval that we put on this staff
Okay.
report.
Can you cite me, I don't know whether you know, is that measured to the nearest property line, or is that to the next? Does it
There-
exclude
there
the
are
public
diff-
right of
There's
way?
different things when it's across from residential versus other things. It depends on the situation. I haven't done the exact one on this now.
Okay. But it certainly would apply to all the private property, we know that. But I'm wondering, do you know if it applies to the public-owned
The standard,
right-of-ways?
actually, the standard is much less against a public right-of-way than it is against private property. Yeah, there's not, we
There's no
measure
sta-
from the private property, yeah.
Okay. And, I mean, that quarry's been there forever, but is there anything on the radar or any discussion you've ever heard that might be reused, or is it?
I will say we've had discussions with different quarries about potential reuse. This has never been discussed with anyone for any future reuse that I am aware of in our office.
Okay. And so the land is leased from the quarry? Lamar is leasing the land from the quarry?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, sure.
Out of the purview of what we're doing here this evening, but were there any runner-up locations, or was this pretty much a?
I cannot answer that
Position
question. I don't know
before.
if the Lamar can or not, but I cannot answer that question.
Okay. The petitioner?
Do you want to answer?
we looked at a few other locations, but as far as what we thought was a strictly commercial and industrial location, this is pretty much the one that we had locked in. A couple of other things that I can add relative to the agreement being assignable. Just a little background, our acquisition was a stock acquisition. We didn't have any assignments, whether it was this agreement or any of our leases, because we acquired all the stock of Hoosier Outdoor Advertising Company. So really that was not an issue. And one other little bit of information I thought I'd add. With the acquisition of Hoosier, we have spent well over $1 million improving the assets that we purchased. One could argue that's self-serving, but we did that from a safety and an aesthetic aspect, where we changed out the substrates of all of our structures to accept an EcoFlex material as opposed to the majority of the paper substrates that were on the boards that were owned by Hoosier. And that's a little bit more background probably than you need, but just thought I'd throw that in there.
Answer your question, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, well,
Okay, no other questions? Let's go to the public. Is there any public comment? No public comment? Back to the board for action, comments, questions?
Just have a comment. I will not be voting for this measure. There's still time in this agreement. It's till July 2012. I don't think this billboard location is a one-for-one trade when it really is our gateway into our community. And we can't guarantee that it's going to be a Welcome to Bloomington billboard or Welcome to Indiana University. So I think there's still time for alternative locations. I don't see this as a commercial industrial zone. It hasn't been that for people in the community. So, and that's why I'll be voting no.
Other comments?
I guess I would support that position as well. I think that I think the spirit of the deal is something that's admirable, and there is some compromise here. But I think that the location, along with all the work that's being done along that route, I am concerned about sort of the gateway and what we're presenting to the community. I also do want to support the efforts of Bloomington to really focus on and really support the investment that we're doing downtown. So I completely understand how this was arrived at in terms of an equation and looking for an alternative. Just I don't know if there's any opening for additional alternative locations to be.
Would like to add to that, though, is I believe that with this negotiation, I believe we anticipated it to be on one of our major corridors. I think we made that assessment when we were doing that we just put that high of a priority on the previous location, the removal of that. I think that I would want to strongly encourage a support of this variance. We do feel it meets. I think we entered into this knowing that this was a similar location that it would go. I think that this is within the spirit of the agreement, and all those that were involved in the agreement also agree that this is within that spirit. So I would encourage a support of the variance request. But
It's tough.
Patrick?
Patrick, I have a corollary question, I guess. If this was denied, is there a time frame when the petitioner comes back or is allowed to come back with a new petition?
There's not a time frame if it would be at a different location. It would be only if it were at this exact same location.
Okay.
Okay, so there isn't.
Yeah, if they chose a different location, they wouldn't have. It would be a different petition on a completely different site. So it would be a different enough change to be able to come forward.
The comments? I've got one. And you're right, this is a valuable high exposure area, but I think they gave up a fairly valuable high exposure area downtown. I mean, that was 3rd Street coming west, which is a major corridor. And the city gained something. They got the Beeline Trail in there, and they gained not having to look at the back of a sign for the view from the Beeline Trail. I think when you could aggregate what the city gained and what they gave up, I think it gets close to what they're asking for now. I'm not opposed to it. Anyway, any other comments? Okay, Patrick, call the roll.
Well, we don't
Well,
have
we
a
don't have a
motion
motion
yet. We don't have a motion yet.
Come on, get the cart before the horse. Okay, we need a motion and a second to dispose of this one way or the other.
I'll move approval of V-42-10, subject to the 2 conditions in the staff report.
Okay, got a motion to move, I'll second that to move things along. We've got a motion and a second for approval. Any other comments? Patrick, call the roll, please.
No.
Peace,
Yes?
Clapper,
Yes.
Seaver,
Yes.
Murray.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes, the petition's granted. Good luck with it. Anything else, Patrick?
That's it for us tonight.
Wow, we're done within an hour. Okay, we are adjourned, and happy holiday to everyone.
holidays,
There'll be
yeah.
several before we come back again.